It seems that the biggest threat to America right now are the election process and who will be the next president. What if the biggest threat is that there will be no president and that the U.S. will be without a president for years? Can that happen? Yes, if martial law is used in response to a possible implosion due to the tension around the election. Someone shot at Trump during a rally a couple of days ago. My opinion is based on information available at this time about the shooting at the Trump rally. There really isn't a lot of information right now, and an investigation could take months. My opinion may or may not change once more information becomes available. That being said, Trump supporters were already angry, and this will probably add fuel to the fire and give an excuse for violence, even war. At the time of this recording, the shooter was identified as a registered Republican. Democrats have spoken against the shooting. So, will this quell some of the tension between Democrats and Republicans? Probably not. Since he wasn't a registered Democrat, what does this mean for the Republican Party? I think it means that there will be more pressure for the purging and unification of Republicans under Trump. Republicans who are not pro-Trump will be targeted more by those who are. The Republicans who aren't pro-Trump and aren't going to attack or try to kill him should be protected from this backlash. I disapprove of the assassination attempt on Trump and believe that opposition should be expressed within legal bounds and without violence. The Republicans who don't agree with Trump have a right to do so and should never use violence to express their beliefs. I am afraid that this will lead to a Republican civil war that could bleed into a national civil war if what is happening within the Republican Party is ignored by outsiders. If there wasn't a threat of violence or to national security, I would agree that Republicans should be left to work things out amongst themselves. However, there is more going on here, and some outside intervention may be needed to make sure that things like what happened at the rally or more acts of violence don't occur again. We must help prevent a murder suicide situation in the current dysfunctional Republican Party family. After this, if we even make it to November, the chance of an implosion if Trump doesn't win is higher. Remember that Trump has a private army that includes other politicians and military leaders. They are insiders and know how to fight a war on the mainland. As an aside, I want to point out that policy-wise, it seems that everything has been falling into place for Trump, even though he is not in office. The Supreme Court recently gave presidents limited immunity against prosecution, which could stop a lot of his legal issues. I thought about the recent policy changes that have aligned with his campaign and how many of the hardest ones have somehow been achieved. I'm not speaking against or for any conservative policies, but note how things have fallen into place nicely for the Republicans. It seems that some of these changes could have been in the works before Trump left office, and maybe that is why a second term was so crucial to fulfill a certain agenda. Again, I am not speaking for or against any policies, just making notes on the process itself. The point is that while some may be thinking that these are things that were recently planned and accomplished, I suspect that some of these plans were already in place or have been worked on years before the public even got wind of it. That could explain why some of the things that most people were sure wouldn't pass have actually passed. Everything was already in place. Psychopaths like it when their targets don't even see it coming. And the past few years have been like that, even though Democrats are in the White House. I'm not calling all Republicans or their supporters psychopaths. I'm referring to the psychopaths among them, which I already said were among the Democrats too. Here is another nightmare scenario. In November, Trump's private army does not like the results of the election, so they decide to burn down the White House. This time there is more preparation, but guess what? They don't care, and America implodes. There is a series of riots and destruction all over the country, and the president declares a national emergency. The military is called in, and I already told you about the nightmare scenario that could be, so I won't go through that again. Things don't go as well as planned, and America is in a civil war. What happens now? There is no president or government anymore. What, you ask? How can that be? Martial law. The paper Martial Law in Times of Civil Disorder, available on the DOJ website, states martial law involves the temporary substitution of military authority for civilian rule and is usually invoked in time of war, rebellion, or natural disaster. When martial law is in effect, the military commander of an area or country has unlimited authority to make and enforce laws. When martial law is in effect, the military commander of an area or country has unlimited authority to make and enforce laws. Martial law is justified when civilian authority has ceased to function, is completely absent, or has become ineffective. Further, martial law suspends all existing laws, as well as civil authority and the ordinary administration of justice. In the United States, martial law may be declared by proclamation of the president or a state governor, but such a formal proclamation is not necessary. Although the U.S. Constitution makes no specific provision for the imposition of martial law, nearly every state has a constitutional provision authorizing the government to impose martial law. The power of martial law, once held to be nearly absolute, has limitations. For example, civilians may not be tried by military tribunals as long as civilian courts are functional. Nonetheless, within the bounds of court decisions, a military commander's authority under martial law is virtually unlimited. In this nightmare scenario, the country will go into shutdown mode similar to the COVID shutdown. They will say it will be only a few weeks or months while they try to regain order. Knowing what's at stake and knowing the drill, most people will comply. Those who won't will start to comply after a few are killed by the infighting when they break the shutdown rules. Weeks will turn into months, will turn into years as the fighting sides try to reach a negotiation. The economy will suffer in a lot of areas, and mental health issues due to the stress will rise. America is a pampered nation, so it won't be long until most of the people are worn out by the Civil War and unrest and just want it to end. They will give in to many undemocratic demands and pressure leaders to give in to any demand so that things will go back to normal, even if it is another new normal. This time it will be easier because we will go along just to make it stop because, believe it or not, we haven't gotten over the COVID shutdown trauma yet. In that nightmare scenario, there are so many possibilities for a new America and a new American government as you have never seen it before. So, does it matter who is president when democracy is threatened by what could happen if martial law is in place? The threat to democracy is not only in the election process or who takes the office. The turmoil around the election can be another threat to democracy. I'm not saying that any of this is definite, but just warning of the things that could happen if nothing is done. I have a master's in public health and recognize the tension around this election as a public health issue months ago. I started the PND Public Safety Project, PPSP, which is a 3-year project to help the public cope with the extreme and unusual tension around the election. I feel that such an intervention is needed now more than ever. After the shooting, Trump's side responded for their supporters to fight, and some even blamed President Biden. It seems that Trump's side is leaning more towards violence than peace. They want to fight. It's time to start getting the public prepared for what could happen next because the public needs to be aware that a real danger exists and given tools to cope or protect itself. The general public will be sitting ducks if nothing is done. If you want to support the PND Public Safety Project, please contact tenannypublishing@gmail.com.